Welcome, y'all. Once again, we want y'all just to sit back and vibe out with us. And most importantly, today we want to educate and be educated. This is episode 5. What better way to roll out this episode than encourage y'all to put your hands up and be counted. We know that election day is coming, November 3rd. And you definitely know it's important to go out and hit those polls. We got DMV's own Domi Jones.
What's happening?
And I'm Eazy, now tuned in to No Cap Radio.
No Cap Radio, man. Here we are, episode 5, and No Cap Radio is proud and honored to be welcoming our first politician to the show, Joshua Cole. So,
welcome, brother.
Thank you.
As if you don't know, Joshua Cole here is a member of the Virginia House of Delegates. So, the first thing we want to know is what is the Virginia House of Delegates, and what do you all do on a daily basis?
Yeah. So the Virginia House of Delegates is the state legislature. We are essentially Congress, but on the state level. The General Assembly is made up of 2 houses, the State Senate and the House of Delegates. The House of Delegates is 100 members, and the State Senate is 40 members. And so every year for 60 days, that's it, we come together, balance the budget, and make laws for the entire Commonwealth. January through March, that's it. We write laws, deliberate laws, argue laws, pass them, and then they go into effect every year on July 1st.
Okay. Yeah, man. So, I mean, I was surprised when I looked you up, and I said, I was expecting to see somebody a little older. I said, man, this guy young, man.
Right,
For real. So, that's like I said, we're honored to have you here, man. That's good. But how did you get, what got you into the government, at such a young age?
So it started when I was 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to drop a little hint for you all that every year the General Assembly hires middle schoolers to come down and work for them. And that's what happened to me. When I was in 8th grade, I was at Drew Middle School, found out about what's called the PAGE program. Mm-hmm. They hired us, they paid us. We stayed 3 months in a hotel in Richmond, and we got to see the process up close and personal. And so that kind of got me focused on state politics. But of course, you get older, you're doing your thing. You ain't focused on politics. You don't really worry about what's going on.
Right.
A lot of attention is on the presidency and Congress and stuff like that. So I came back about 10 years later. I was 26 years old. I started working for the state Senate as a staffer. I was in the backroom meetings. I was working in the committees. And also being a pastor in the area, I knew all of our elected officials, but I didn't know their policies. I didn't know their politics. Mm-hmm. And so working down there at the state Senate, I would see our state senator talk to you just like I'm talking right now. Oh, yeah, brother, I'll vote for that. I'll take care of that. And go right into committee or subcommittee where the votes aren't recorded. Vote opposite of what he said he was going to do.
Wow.
It's not recorded, so you would know.
Right.
He comes out and said, oh, man, I tried, but it just didn't make it through.
What?
And it was all of this going forth, and even just the grimy, like the stuff you see on TV about politics, that's legit what happens. Now, I'm not talking about D.C. I'm talking about in Richmond.
Right.
That type of griminess and that type of stab you in the back type of mentality is literally what happens in Richmond. And so I got a little frustrated. I was like, man, if these people could be here, we can get somebody better in.
Right.
And so my intent was to campaign for somebody, to get on somebody's campaign, just to be a volunteer, knock on doors. But just giving you a history lesson, the delegate who was in the seat at the time was the Speaker of the House, like the most powerful politician in Virginia. And no one wanted to run against him. And someone was like, well, maybe you should run. I was like, and a couple of months later, we decided we were going to do it. I was like, at the time I was only 26. And I was like, he's going to destroy your life. I was like, he can destroy my life. I'll move to Tennessee and live with my mama. I'll be all right.
Yeah.
So we did it. That was the first time I ran, was in 2017.
Okay. Yeah.
And we lost by just like 73 votes. We lost by 73 votes. And everyone was just like, you don't stand a chance. You're this little kid. No one knows who you are. This is power that you're going up against. So when we finished on election night with 73 votes, everybody was like, dang, we wish we would have helped them out.
Yeah.
We came back, 2 years later, and the rest is history. Here we are.
Yeah, man, that's good. There's a couple things you said. You said about the PAGE program. My cousin actually did. I remember being in high school. Yeah.
Okay.
And he left for Mario did that.
Oh,
That's your cousin?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Me and Mario did it the same year.
Okay.
He was on the Senate side, and I was on the House side.
Yeah, man. Oh, man.
Wow.
Went left for a couple of months. He did it big, though. That's nice. I like that they do that, man. Yeah. And another thing you said you were more focused on the presidential election. I think that's what a lot of us do. We focus so much on the presidential election, not realizing that, it starts from the ground up.
Yeah.
So what is like the first, because, man, honestly, I'll be honest with you. I want to be more political.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to understand myself. Where does it start?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we study government, when we study civics class in middle school and in high school, we learned that there are 3 levels to government. And on those 3 levels, there are 3 branches to the government. The 3 levels are local, state, and federal. Okay. And of course, the sexy elections are the federal elections. So we worried about our congressman and our president. Right. But what we first have to understand is you don't build a house with the roof first. You start at the foundation.
Right.
And I talk to a lot of people all the time who say, oh, I'm not political. I'm not really worried about what politics does. But I always tell them, well, your landlord is worried about politics, and that's how they keep your rent high. Yeah. Your boss is worried about politics, and that's how they keep your pay low, and that's why you're still struggling. And so we have to make sure we're focusing on every level. It's on the local level where the city council is, or the board of supervisors, or the town council is, and they're in control of how much money goes to the schools. They're in control of how much your local taxes are. They're in control to make sure that the roads get the money that the roads need in order to be paved and taken care of, and that the potholes are filled on time. If you live in a city like the city of Fredericksburg, you have a mayor and a city council. It's the mayor who has the opportunity to appoint the police chief that holds the police chief accountable. So if you don't like how the police are treating people of color or black folks in the community, it's the mayor who has control over that. If you're in a county like Stafford or Spotsylvania, you elect a sheriff every year. And so it's not all about just putting my best friend or my uncle's friend because I know the name. What do they stand on progressive issues as it relates to policing and policing reform and holding all the police accountable in their sheriff's department? So we look at all of that. Even with the lawyers, it's the Commonwealth's attorney who sues and sets the judgments on you that they recommend to the judges. Those are elected every 4 years. And so what kind of Commonwealth's attorney do you want? The one who's going to keep locking up people, or the one who's going to give judgments the opportunity to rehabilitate and do better in life and come back into society doing great things?
See, I knew this was going to happen. We was going to get you to talking, and you were going to answer the question before we even get to answer. Because that's one of the things. I had a conversation with a friend last week, and that was one of the things why they say they didn't vote, because they felt the community never changed. But you just spoke to why that is. It's the people who are in power. Absolutely. So if you're not voting to get them out or get the right people in, you're shooting yourself in the foot.
What I would encourage, especially for us as people of color and black folks, the first thing we say is, well, my vote doesn't count.
Right.
And I think we're focused on the electoral college when the presidential election. Exactly. But that's the only one that has an electoral college. Congress, the House of Delegates, Senate, the state Senate, city council, board of supervisors, mayors, none of those have electoral colleges. They are done exactly by the popular vote. And so in order to say that your vote doesn't count, you have literally drank the Kool-Aid they fed you. If your vote didn't matter, why are they trying so hard to prevent you from voting in the first place?
Exactly.
And so you look at all of the different regulations they have to stop you from voting. Most people, when you go to vote, you have to have a voter, a photo ID. You take your photo ID, and that should be it. But in certain cases, now we repealed a lot of these laws in Virginia this year, but now you have to have your address on your ID has to match the exact address that's on the books. That has to match the exact address in the system. But if I just moved and I haven't had my driver's license replaced, it doesn't matter that my voter registration in the system has the address I just told you. Your address is not the same on your driver's license, so you can't register to vote. That's the type of stuff they do.
Yeah.
Or because you were incarcerated. You've been home for 10 years, but you have to do the process to get your voting rights restored. Why do you have to do that process when you've been home for 10 years?
Right.
They do all of these things to keep us from voting because they know that we have people power. And so we have taken the aspect of our vote doesn't matter, so we don't even pay attention to politics and we don't even listen to politicians, and that's how the bad ones keep getting in.
Yeah. Now y'all hear that, man. Y'all hear how important it is. And I did want to make a point that I forgot. The last day to register to vote is October 13th. So if you have not registered to vote, we strongly encourage you guys to get out and do that, man. Because it seems like now it's more important than ever to get out and, you know.
And if you're watching this, today is, what is today, the 22nd?
Mm-hmm.
Today's the 22nd.
Yeah.
It's National Voter Registration Day.
Right.
So you're probably not watching this on today. But when you watch this, go ahead and go to the DMV website and register. And I'm grateful to Governor Northam. I passed a bill this General Assembly session, which passes automatic voter registration. So every time you go to the DMV, whether it's to change your address, renew your driver's license, no matter what, any transaction at the DMV, you're going to be registered to vote.
Okay.
Good.
And they always asking you, like, you registered to vote,
Yeah.
bro? So you have no
So y'all
excuse.
just voted that in.
We just passed it. That was my bill. I carried that, and the governor signed that into law.
Hey, you heard it.
There you go.
Yeah, big ups to Joshua Cole, man. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, the people that don't vote, you've answered that. Yeah, man. So, man.
When does he leave us?
Right. Cross all these out. But no, so the best way to, because one thing about, you know, I go to the vote, man. Sometimes my mom's like, go down there and vote for so-and-so. You know what I mean? I think that's what a lot of us are doing.
Mhm.
But if we really want to know who's running and, you know, a way to look them up and see what they're actually doing for the community, what's the best way to research them?
I think it's key for us to understand that it's important to know who's running.
Mhm.
And we hear it all the time. Well, my mama said go vote for such and such. That's cool. But how do you know you and your mama agree on the same thing?
Right.
And I also want to say that all skin folk ain't kinfolk. So just because they black doesn't mean they're fighting for us. And so we have to be careful of who's running and who we are selecting. This is also key why it's important to pay attention to what we call primary elections. Primary elections are the time when two candidates from the same party are running against each other. That's when we get to hear their really in-depth point of views and where they really stand.
Okay.
And we have to make sure that we pay attention to I don't care if you're Republican, I don't care if you're Democrat, Libertarian, Vegetarian, whatever you are.
Yeah.
When they have these primaries, pay attention and you'll find out what these statements and these platforms of these candidates are. And then you vote in the primary for the best person that you believe will fight for you. They come out of the primary and then that person goes to the general election.
Okay.
And typically what happens is they're campaigning all year long. We have elections every year in Virginia. We know the president is every 4 years, the governor is every 4 years, Congress and the House of Delegates are every 2 years, state senate is every 4 years, U.S. Senate is every 6 years. So we literally have elections in Virginia we don't have time to say, oh, I gotta take a break. We ain't got time for that.
Right.
So you have to be paying attention. And typically what will happen is typically about 4 to 3 months before the election day, that's when you really will start paying attention. Now, mind you, we as candidates are campaigning year round. So this is not my election year. So I'm working on legislation. We're still in special session right now, but my friend Qasim is running for Congress, so I'm campaigning for him. But when January rolls around, I'm going to be in session. Once session ends in February, I hit the ground running, campaigning again for re-election in November. I'm running since February, but you all probably won't start paying attention until about August or September, when it's time, you got a couple of more weeks to go before election. So when you start seeing these candidates start sending mail to your house, it's important that you just take a glance at it. Whether most of the time we know that it's sad to say, when we're campaigning, we're wasting money by sending mail to people's houses because a lot of time they're going to see it, they're going to look at the picture, and they're just going to throw it in the trash.
Right.
Yeah.
So whenever you get those materials in the mail, it's good to just take a glance at it to see, who is this Bob person? Do they stand for criminal justice reform? Do they stand for this? Do they stand for that? If you don't like what they're saying, throw it in the trash, but make sure you know their name so you don't end up voting for them.
Right.
Then you find someone that you find that is going to do if you're looking for criminal justice reform, marijuana legalization, a women's right to choose, or whatever have you, find that candidate and then make sure you're reading their websites. You're reading the materials they have on social media. And that's why I love this age that we're in now, because you can find candidates on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, whatever platform you utilize. I assure you a candidate is on there and you can directly interact with them. I answer all my Instagram messages, all my Facebook messages, and all my Twitter messages personally. I have a staff, but I'm the one that answers those. And so if you have questions for your politicians, your legislators, or your candidates, reach out to them on social media. They'll definitely answer.
Okay, we heard that. Y'all heard that. Social media is where you go to find more information. Ask them directly.
I do want to share this too. If people use Facebook, there's an option on Facebook called Town Hall. If you go on the Facebook app and you hit the menu and the more options, you'll see this little government building that says Town Hall. If you click on Town Hall, it'll tell you who all your elected officials are based on where you live.
Okay.
And then because they're on there, you can just click on their page. It'll take you directly to their page so that you can send them a message.
Okay. Yeah. That's the information we wanted put out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Where to go to find more about the candidates and who they are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's
There's
very
another
important.
website that I love using this. It's vpap.org. VPAP.org. This website, if you plug in your address, it'll tell you where you go to vote, who's on your ballot, what election dates are next, and how many days until the election dates. But also I love it because it's for transparency. It'll also tell you how much money the candidates are raising and where they're raising the money from, who's buying them in essence.
Okay.
And then if you have the General Assembly session, it'll also tell you what bills are coming through the General Assembly session and who voted for what or who voted against what. Now, if you're not into policy and you're not wonky like that, that may not matter to you.
Right.
But if you want to know where you go to vote and when the next election day is, that's a good resource to use.
Right.
VPAP.org.
So is everything just all in one?
All there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we had actually looked you up, and we know you're doing a lot, to help the community and things. I know Domi had a list. You had a list of things that he was doing.
Yeah. But before I get to that, though, like when you say that these candidates will go in and say, yeah, I'm going to vote for this or I stand for this, and then go in and vote for something else.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know to trust, or can you trust what they send you in the mail on that pamphlet?
So now, when I worked for the Senate in 2016, we didn't record committee meetings and subcommittee meetings. Now that I'm in the House of Delegates, one of my colleagues passed a bill, so now every meeting we have in the House of Delegates is live streamed and it's recorded. And so now most politicians can't get away with stuff they used to get away with in Virginia. You can now track our votes from committee, subcommittee to the floor.
There you go.
You can now see, how we voted. And one thing I try to do is be extremely transparent. Everything I ran on when I was running for delegate, when I got to the House of Delegates, if I didn't introduce the bill, I voted on it. So everything I campaigned on, I literally did. And if I was to change my mind, because I think we hold people accountable for what they said 20, 15, 10 years ago to what they're doing today, people are going to change their mind.
Right.
Today you want Coke, but tomorrow you're going to want orange soda.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't hold yourself to the same standard, you can't hold the politicians to the same standard.
Mm-hmm.
But what I would challenge you is this. Hold them accountable for what they're saying they're going to do.
Right.
And when I don't do something that I campaigned on, or if I change my mind, I try to make people in the 28th District or City of Fredericksburg and Stafford County aware and say, hey, I know I campaigned on this. Prime example, when you go to vote in November, there's something on the ballot called, there's 2 constitutional amendments, option 1 and option 2. On option 1, I campaigned on option 1. But what I found out is after getting in the House of Delegates, there was some stuff in it that is not making it as powerful as we need it to be. So now I'm campaigning against it. So if you didn't know, you would think, oh, he's lying to you now.
I see.
But what we did was, one of the things, and I hate to get all into the nitty gritty, but option 1 is talking about how the maps for the House of Delegates, Congress, and the Senate are drawn. Typically, we as delegates go in and draw our own maps. We go right in and say, oh, every 10 years, I want to suit my district to me. I'm going to tailor fit my district to fit me. But that's not democracy, because if we're supposed to vote, we're supposed to vote for who we want.
Right.
The legislators shouldn't draw who they want to vote for them.
Right.
So option 1 on the ballot is saying we want to create an independent commission of citizens who would draw the maps instead of the delegates and the senators. And that's great. But the problem is, this particular amendment does not include protections for people of color. The Voting Rights Act language is not in this amendment. The amendment itself does not stop us from gerrymandering. We passed a bill already that did that. And it's not independent. When we say independent, we as legislators should not be involved in the process. But the way it's written now, it's a 16-member board. 8 are legislators. The other 8 are legislative appointed citizens. That still means we can gerrymander any way we want to.
Yeah.
And so I still stand by the premise that I campaigned on, redistricting reform with a constitutional amendment to create a commission. But we need to make sure that the commission we put in the Constitution is legit and has the protections we need. So that's why I've been urging people, when you go to vote no on number 1 on the amendment, because we have to do better to protect communities of color and people in Virginia as a whole. And so how to hold people accountable, check the internet. You can see what their votes are. You can see how they voted. If they said they were going to do this but voted another way. And then ask them, why did you change your vote? Because I think people think it's just so easy that, oh, he said he was going to do this, but he didn't. Stuff that happens in Richmond and stuff that happens in Washington, D.C. is so convoluted.
Yeah.
There will be a bill that's introduced today that by the time it's passed tomorrow will be completely different than what it was when it was introduced.
Right.
I have a bill that I'm carrying right now through the special session. I introduced it. It was good to go. The morning I woke up to go introduce it into committee, I legit had 10 phone calls, and the bill changed 4 times in under 2 hours before it was even presented in committee.
So you had to present this revised bill that you
Wasn't even prepared for.
Or may not even stand for it anymore after it's been revised 4 times.
Yeah. And so people have to also understand it's not just as easy of, oh, he campaigned on this, but he voted this way. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to find out why they voted the way they voted, because sometimes the devil is in the details in the bill. Mm-hmm. And so we have to be very careful with that as well.
Okay.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she, now I will tell everybody, I'm a Democrat and I don't like Trump.
Oh, yeah.
And so she literally was the last block and the last check to stop Trump from doing whatever he wanted to do. And so a lot of people don't understand that. The Republicans are happy because the Supreme Court is a lifetime appointment. Mm-hmm. So once you get in, you're in. Mm-hmm. And this will give Trump 4 Supreme Court appointees in the 4 years he's been in.
So it's like he's stacking.
He's already stacked the courts because presidents appoint federal judges. Mm-hmm. He's already appointed the most federal judges any president in any president's time. Mm. And so we also have to understand the implications of that for people of color. Like there are people around here who don't believe in systemic racism, and they don't believe that conservative judges are out to get black people. Now, not all conservative judges are, but many conservative judges are about the law and the book of the law and doing what you're supposed to do. And so as soon as you see a person of color or a black person comes in, they're going to throw the book at them hard. Oh, yeah. But if a white person comes up and they see their son in that person, they're going to be chill with them.
Yeah. So I went on this site, and what I want to go through now with some of these headlines that I saw and maybe give your take on them. This is your work, right? So the first headline is Delegate Joshua Cole announces legislation to address police brutality in upcoming session.
Yeah. So when COVID hit and the state budget took a big hit, the governor had shared with us that he was most likely going to call us back into a special session. And like I shared with you earlier, the General Assembly only meets for 3 months every year, January through March, and that's it. So whenever there needs to be new laws introduced, the governor will call us back into a special session. And so initially the special session he called was just to redo the budget, just to handle COVID stuff, just to handle relief for COVID. But then George Floyd happened. Then Ahmaud Arbery happened. And then Breonna Taylor happened. And so I called the Speaker of the House and I said, hey, Madam Speaker, I think we need to use this special session to address police brutality. And little did I know, about 6 or 7 of my colleagues had already called her as well. So she called the governor and said, I think we need to address police issues in this special session. And so that's exactly what we did. So I issued a statement saying what I was calling for. After observing what happened in the city of Fredericksburg during that first week of June, during the protests, where the protesters were tear gas, where they were arrested for activating on their First Amendment right, I said we have to address some of these issues. And I think we first have to understand that this is not an attack on cops, because a lot of the bills and the laws we're putting in place, a lot of cops individually are okay with them. We're talking about no-knock warrants, ending no-knock warrants. That's what killed Breonna Taylor. We're talking about ending neck restraints and having neck holds, what killed George Floyd. We're getting rid of that in Virginia. We're talking about making sure that the police are demilitarized. There's no reason in the small city of Fredericksburg we have a war vehicle plowing through the streets like this is Afghanistan or something. And so all of these things are the things we're addressing in the General Assembly. We even passed in the House ending qualified immunity. Qualified immunity is the fact that if something happens with a police officer, they can't be sued. And so that's why you see a lot of these police officers, when stuff happens, they get off scot-free.
Right.
And so we passed it in the House, but they killed it over in the state Senate. And these are all issues as relates to holding police accountable, not attacking police officers, because if you're a police officer and you're doing your job and you're doing it well, none of this stuff is going to apply to you. But if you are a police officer who's usurping authority and abusing your authority, you should be very afraid, because we're coming for you and we're coming for your badge. And so that's what that headline was about, just outlining the police brutality and the police accountability legislation we were introducing. And many of that legislation has already passed and is now headed over to the Senate.
Okay, I got another one. Governor signs Delegate Joshua Cole's hazardous vegetation removal bill into law.
Okay, so we had a group of students when I was running for delegate that said, hey, our friend died. She died in a car accident because there was a bush on the side of the road and she couldn't see what was coming. So we wrote a law, and we want to know, if you get elected, would you introduce this bill for us? I said, sure, that sounds pretty easy. And these students, these were high school juniors and seniors who wrote a bill. I took the bill to Richmond once I got elected, introduced it, and it passed the General Assembly. And I didn't write it. It was these high school students from Colonial Forge who wrote the bill in honor of their friend who died, Grace. And so basically what this bill does, if you're ever sitting at a stop sign, you know how they have these big old bushes sitting right there, and you have to inch forward because you can't see. Yeah. Well, how do you get those removed? I didn't know this, but Stafford County and Spotsylvania County just can't go out and remove it. They have to call VDOT. And when you call VDOT, you know it can take VDOT a year, 5 months, 6 months to ever come out and remove it. So the bill only allows the locality like Stafford County or Spotsylvania or King George to just go out and cut the tree down once they have approval and move on. They don't have to wait for months or even a year for VDOT to come and do it.
Okay, that's awesome. All right. Delegate Cole joins call for governor to release nonviolent inmates during COVID-19.
So as we look at what was happening, you look at Red Onion State Prison, you look at a couple of these prisons in Virginia, we were seeing an uptick and a rise in COVID cases. And what we were deciding was you have people who were in there who are about to be released anyways, whether it was for geriatric release because they were too old, or whether they were at risk of catching COVID or dying if they had COVID, and they only had a few weeks or a few months left on their sentence. I joined in with a bunch of colleagues to say, hey, allow them to be released early. Here they are, 89, 70, however many years old, and if they catch COVID, we know they're going to die. Right. Just go ahead and let them be released. And there were stipulations put on the release that they had to be under 12 months left on their sentence. So it wasn't just like we were releasing a bunch of criminals and say, y'all go out and get free. These were people who were already about to be released anyways. And so we said, hey, Governor, make the call, release them early so that we have the rest of the people who are incarcerated, they can have room and be spaced out in the jails. We do have a problem because the governor did put some money in the budget, which would allow, I think we said it was about, I think it was like 1,000 or so odd citizens who were eligible for that early release. As of the summer, I'm on the Public Safety Committee, and we had the Secretary of Public Safety report to us. And I haven't tracked the numbers since about August, but in August, only 300 people have been released out of that 1,000 list of people, and that was from March all the way to August. From March to August, only 300 people have been released out of that list of 1,000 some odd people. And so that's sad. And we get emails all the time from citizens who are saying, my father is in jail and he's sick and da-da-da-da-da. We need him to be early release. And if you were eligible for early release, you were going to receive a letter. There was no reason why Department of Corrections and Department of Justice did not expedite those release, especially when they were going to be released anyway.
So do we know where they were held up? Were they at the correctional facilities themselves?
They were at the correctional facilities, and then it was the job of the Department of Corrections. Our job is to put the money in the budget. Then we direct the department to do what they need to do. It was the job of the Department of Corrections to ensure that those inmates were released early.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure the number is higher than 300 now.
Right.
Here we are in October, going into October. But I still think the Department of Corrections did a poor job of releasing those people in time.
Right. All right, I got one more. Delegate Joshua Cole requests Governor freeze rent, mortgage, and utility payments during COVID-19 crisis.
Yep. So that was the very beginning when everything started happening. People were losing jobs, they were losing hours, they were being furloughed, or they were being laid off indefinitely, meaning that they still had their job, but they just didn't know when they were coming back to work. And at this time, this was before the stimulus package had come out. This is before any of that. So people were like, well, what the heck am I going to do? I don't have a job. I don't have any money coming in, but I still got rent due. I still got mortgage due. I still got the light bill and the water bill due. And so a part of the abilities of the government is to protect the interest of the people. And so the governor has the ability to put what's called a rent or eviction moratorium in place. The courts are what processes eviction. Once the landlord is mad at you, or
Right.
you've done whatever you needed to do and the landlord wants to evict you, they get the paperwork and they take it to the courts. And so I joined again with a couple of my colleagues and said, hey, we need to look out for people during this time frame. And so there were landlords who were mad at us because they're like, well, I want my money. Well, this would apply to you too. So if you are a landlord with a mortgage and you use the rent that you receive from your tenants to pay that, that would have been frozen too. And so the governor did petition the Supreme Court, and I think starting in April, the Supreme Court put eviction moratoriums online. That went from April till about maybe July. In July, evictions started taking place again, and we were already in the thousands from just being enacted from July until now. I don't even know the exact number, but we're already over 1,000 evictions already. And so when we came into this special session, another bill I introduced was an eviction moratorium, just stating that they cannot kick you out if you have lost your job due to COVID. Now, if you're tearing up property or doing something else, that's between you and your landlord. But if you're not working or you don't have money because of COVID, your landlord should not be able to kick you out. And one thing I am grateful that the governor did was he implemented a rent and mortgage protection program. So if you have lost your job or it's hard for you to pay your rent or your mortgage right now, we have a program in Virginia. Just Google it, Virginia Rent and Mortgage Protection Program. And they will give you the money to pay your back rent up to the current month. So if we're here and say right now, it's after the 15th of September, they will pay October's rent and everything that you haven't paid to make sure you're caught up.
Wow.
And so if you are struggling and you need to pay now this is only if you're struggling due to COVID stuff, not if you just didn't pay your rent.
Take advantage.
So if you're struggling right now, Google Virginia Rent and Mortgage Protection Program. And there's some information, you have to fill out the information and they will help you out. And so evictions are still going on. But we're still fighting in this special session to get some protections in place. I have a bill that just passed out of the House, went over to the Senate. It passed out of the Senate committee. We're waiting for it to hit the full Senate floor. But if you were evicted or had late payments due to COVID or during this entire time frame, many people don't know we're still in an emergency order from the governor. During this entire emergency order, if you were evicted or had late payment, if you go move into a new place, your new landlord can't hold that against you when they do your credit check.
Okay.
One of my other colleagues down from Hampton Roads, Delegate Price, she has a bill in that's making it mandatory that landlords have to offer tenants payment plans so that they can get back on top of things. So we're doing work in this special session. It's not just about police brutality and police accountability.
Right.
It's about protection for COVID as well.
Yeah, man, I love to hear that because actually I work in like leasing. You know what I mean? So I'm seeing people not able to pay. I was going to ask you what happens when you still have to pay.
Yeah.
So that program that you were talking about, are you having to pay them back or you
Nope.
Okay.
It's a rent, mortgage, and protection program.
Okay.
So we put a couple of billions of dollars in. This is all money that comes from the federal government through the CARES Act, the stimulus money that they approved. So as long as you fill out the paperwork and you can prove that either you've lost hours or you are unemployed due to COVID or whatever have you, as long as you can prove that you haven't paid your rent due to COVID stuff, they will pay your current month's rent and any backed rent because of the situation. And it's what the government is supposed to do. It's protecting the people. So we're just going to pay that. And then, like I said, we have other bills that are coming in. If they pass this year, we're in October. According to the state constitution, it has to be enacted for 4 months. So if we adjourn in October, it would be December or January that this stuff will go into play, where landlords have to offer you payment plans. They can't just say, well, you owe me, you owe me, you owe me. They have to offer you a payment plan so that you can get back on top of things. And the same thing for those who are homeowners who have rent mortgage that they have to pay too. The bank should be offering you payment plans and not just deferments where you're not paying and then 5 months down the road you got to pay it all in one lump sum.
Right.
Yeah.
Man, this just shows more and more the importance of voting, man.
Yeah.
Y'all
I know.
And let me just say this, and I have to say this because I am an elected Democrat. Every bill we've been putting through this special session, the Republicans have been voting against. Whether it's the police accountability bills, whether it's the COVID protection bills, they have been voting against it. And you tell me how you feel about me, about either one where you put your money or how you vote. And we are telling you on these floor sessions as we're deliberating and arguing against these bills that ending no-knock warrants, ending neck restraints, and holding police accountable is going to protect black and brown lives, and you still vote against it?
Yeah.
When we tell you that black and brown people are being evicted and charged at higher rates than white people, and you still vote against it, that tells you what that party is all about.
Right, definitely. Man, so one thing I wanted to touch on, and I wanted to definitely shine some light on. I know some of you might not have heard. I just actually learned about it, but Ruth Bader Ginsburg held a seat in the Supreme Court Justice.
She's Supreme Court Justice, yeah.
Yep, fought and made a big difference for women's rights. For things that I wouldn't even thought about. Women can go into a bank and get a loan, without a man signing, get a credit card. Just open up accounts, things, just really fought for women's rights. And, she lost her life. And, we're definitely thankful for her. But it's a big thing going on about, because I know when Obama was president, it was a law was made, or they said they couldn't fill that seat.
During the election
during the election year. So now they're trying to make it to where that seat can be filled, with Trump in office. And just if you could just touch on the importance of that and why they're making such a big deal about it.
I think people have to understand the importance of the judicial system. So like I was sharing with you, I told you the levels of government. It's local, state, and federal. But the branches of the government are the legislative, which I serve in, the executive, depending on what level you're in, that's the mayor, the governor, or the president, and the judicial system. And the judicial system is the courts, your local circuit court, your district court, the Court of Appeals, and the Supreme Court. And everyone has a job. We in the legislative branch, the congressmen, the representatives, the delegates, the senators, we write and make the laws. Then it's the president or the governor's office who enforces the law. But then it's the judge's responsibility to interpret the laws. So if you read the Bible and you're trying to figure out what it says, someone has to interpret what that means to everybody. It's the judge's job to interpret how the law should go into effect. And so let's say we write a law and someone feels discriminated against by the law we wrote. They can sue it'll go all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will pass a judgment on how that law should be enacted or what it really means. And so when you have issues like workers' rights, women's right to choose for her own bodily autonomy, the Voting Rights Act, or if black people are considered legit citizens of the anything like that, that laws are created, if you have a problem with it, the Supreme Court is going to properly interpret it. Now, during the entire time President Trump has been in, he has appointed 3 Supreme Court justices. With Ruth Bader Ginsburg passing away, this will give him the opportunity, he's appointed 2. This will give him the opportunity to appoint 3. And like you said, the last year of President Obama's presidency, 8 months before the election day, he appointed a nominee, Judge Merrick Garland. And the Senate, who was controlled by the Republicans at the time, said, we are not going to approve this nomination because it's an election year. The next president should choose the nominee. Well, fast forward 4 years later, we are in the exact same predicament. Mind you, we're only 3 months away from Election Day. And they haven't even planned a funeral, and her body hasn't even gotten cold yet. And the Republicans are already stating, we have the votes, and we're going to approve, and we're going to vote this year for a Supreme Court nominee. Now, I want us to understand, and I might get in trouble by my Democrats by saying this, but what we're seeing here is not a Republican or a Democratic issue. What we're seeing is an abuse of power issue. Because they're in power, they've gotten comfortable of being in power, but they're afraid of losing their power because no one knows how November is going to turn out. We got all this polling, we got all this data, but it's literally a toss-up. We don't know how November is going to turn out. They don't know either. So because they don't know if they're going to keep their power or lose their power, they're going to try to do everything they can to cement their power. President Trump has also appointed the most federal judges in any president's history. He has literally stacked the courts. And his last reach for power, if he loses it, would be appointing a Supreme Court justice. The importance of this is a Supreme Court justice is a lifetime appointment. They don't get elected or reelected every 4 years or every 6 years. Once they're appointed, they're in there. And it's hard to get them out.
So that goes back to this being one of the most historical elections coming up. So your take on this whole election and the importance of voting, I feel like you've covered that.
Yeah.
But to just bring it full circle to basically close the show out, how can we? What do we need to do, and what should we hold the Democrats accountable to on their end once they do get our vote?
Yeah, I think that's very key because, and again, like I said, the problem is a power struggle. You hear a lot of people who will say, well, I don't like the Democrats because in Democratic-run cities, crime is high, people are being shot, and it doesn't look good. But what about Republican-run states and counties? There are the sickest states in the nation and people who have struggled the most with addiction. So it's not a Democratic or Republican problem. It's a power problem. People get elected, get used to their power, and forget what they were elected to do. So the way you hold these elected officials accountable is by making sure you keep engaged with them. That's one way they can do things whatever they want to do because people will say it when I was knocking on doors. Y'all only come around here every 4 years or every 2 years when it's time to get elected. But it's also your job as the electorate, the people who vote, to make sure you're holding them accountable during that time when they're not there.
Right.
So following their votes, and we'll see the headlines when it's election time. Delegate Joshua Cole voted to release criminals from jail. Delegate Joshua Cole said he was going to support this and voted against this. You know, then your question is, well, why did you do that? And then we begin to start the dialogue on why I voted for or why I didn't vote for. You either one are going to agree or you're going to disagree, or there's going to be some understanding. We have to make sure we're keeping in contact with these elected officials all the time. Because I have a colleague who's in Richmond right now, who's an elected official. His grandfather was a congressman. His father was a state senator. He just walked right into his position. He didn't have any serious challenger. His website is still a campaign website. Hasn't even been updated since he's been elected. And here we are almost 10 months into being delegates. People don't reach out to him. People don't call him. So because they don't reach out and call him, he don't have to do anything for real.
Right.
And so it's the same thing for many of us. If we're in a comfortable seat, if you're in what we call blue district, that's solid blue, no Republican's going to take you out. But you have the opportunity to find someone else who's doing a better job than that delegate and get them out. A better job than that senator and get them out. So we hold them accountable, whether it's Democrats or Republicans, by being engaged with them. You don't always have to call them every day. Well, Senator, why'd you do that? Well, Delegate, why'd you do that? You don't have to do that.
Yeah.
You can just reach out when you're passionate about certain things. If you're passionate about ending qualified immunity, call the senators who killed it and say, why did you do this? If you're passionate about raising the state minimum wage and you found out that while we passed it in Virginia, but your delegate voted against it, hey, delegate such and such, why did you vote against raising the minimum wage? I've been struggling for years and I need more pay. When you find out all of these issues that's come through the General Assembly or has gone through Congress, just shoot them a tweet, shoot them a message on Facebook, shoot them an email, or call their office. This is how you hold us accountable. And there are going to be times when I make votes that people are not going to be happy with. And there's going to be times when I make votes and everybody's going to love me for it. And most of the time, we get sucked in on all the good things that our politicians have done that we don't hold people accountable. And it's just like a relationship. When you're in a relationship with somebody, you love them, you're going to be with them no matter what, but you still want to hold them accountable for their actions and make sure that they're holding themselves accountable. And it's the same thing with being an elected official.
Right.
Okay.
I have to say something because you know, a lot of people have voiced this to me, and you mentioned something earlier. I think it might have been off, you know, on camera, but a lot of people say, "Well, I don't like Trump and I don't like Joe Biden either." You know, for their own personal reasons. Is it a time? And I also know that when you go to vote, you know, a lot of times it's not just going to be Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Now, of course, we don't hear about the other people that, you know, they're not publicized as much. But is it a time to say? Because my thing is, if you don't vote for one and you vote for somebody else, and but basically that's a vote for the person. You're right.
Yeah.
So is it time to say you just need to pick the best of both evils?
So I don't like using that terminology. We have to pick the greatest evil or the greater, whichever one, because there literally is definitions and determinations between one or the other. If you don't vote, that means you're fine with whatever option we have.
Right.
Now, you may not vote, but whoever wins, then you can't complain about what they're doing.
Exactly.
But I would also challenge many of us who are frustrated with the type of candidates that each party keeps producing. If you're mad that the Republican Party keeps producing Trumpers, if you're mad that the Democratic Party just keeps producing old, stale white guys, then get involved. Each county has a local political committee. Whether you're a Republican, whether you're a Democrat, whether you're a Democratic Socialist or a Libertarian or a Green Party, each county has a local party. Get involved. Once you're involved there, that's how you get involved in choosing who becomes the president. Everyone always talks about, well, the DNC did this, the DNC did that. But the DNC are elected people from the people. They're not politicians, they're just elected people, and most people don't know that. How do you get in the DNC? You run. Get in the DNC, and then you put your voice at the table. Because if you're not sitting at the table, that means you're on the menu. And Shirley Chisholm would say, if you don't have a seat at the table, you get a folding chair, pull up, and make your seat there yourself.
Right.
And so we have to make sure, especially as Black women, especially as LGBTQIA people, especially as people of color, especially as Black folks, especially as people who have English as a second language, we have to make sure we are at the table when the decisions are being made. Because if we're not, white people who are rich and wealthy, who are privileged, who don't know our struggle, are going to make rules and regulations for us, which is not going to look good for us.
Right.
And so we have to make sure that no matter what your story is, I was reading someone's Twitter page and said, I want a president who has HIV. I want a president who's been divorced 5 times. I want a president who knows what it's like to be beat up by her husband. I want a president who knows what it's been like to be homeless, because then I know what are they going to do? They're going to fight for me.
Right.
And all the time, politics is all about who can raise the money, who can get their face out there, and who appears to be electable. And that's how we keep getting the same type of politicians.
Trying to get the perfect person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what I want to see is when I'm running next year for re-election, that the district beside me, I got a single mom who's been divorced 3 times and who's homeless right now, but she's trying to pass legislation that's going to protect single mothers who have children with autism, who have children who have reduced and free lunch, so they know what kind of bills to put in for their citizens.
So speaking of that, a friend of mine, Crystal Vessels, I'm gonna put her out
Hey,
because
Crystal.
I know she's not gonna come on this show, but I want her to. She has an organization called Unmasked. She done had it for 7-8 years.
I know Crystal.
So look,
Okay.
she is feeding these children
Yep.
who basically are at home and not eating because they're not going to school.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask, what's on the table as far as legislation for children during this crisis?
Yeah. One of the things we did this General Assembly session, I was really excited about it. Delegate Danica Rome from Manassas passed the bill. So when we've been out of school and school stopped, most of the school districts were feeding lunches to students.
Mm-hmm.
They were doing it either on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, or on Mondays and on Wednesdays, or different things like that. But one of the things that was really hurtful was if you came to pick up lunch for your kids and your kids weren't with you, they weren't giving you lunch. So a lady who was in Delegate Rome's district called her and said, my son has cancer and he can't come out the house. And now I can't get him food because they won't let me take his lunch to him because he wasn't with me. So she called the federal agency, got something done on the federal agency level, and then we came to this special session and she passed the bill. Now kids are going to be able to receive their lunch, whether they're in school or not. And a major shout out to the city of Fredericksburg. Not only are they giving them lunch, but they're giving them breakfast for a couple of days as well. Okay. And so we want to make sure that these students, and talking about education while students are at home, people have to understand, for some of these kids, as a behavior aide in the Richmond public school system, I know, I've watched it. Some of these kids come to school hungry because they don't have food at home.
Right.
Exactly.
Some of these kids, the only escape from life they get is by coming to school. And so while I would love everyone to be online for safety and precautions, not everybody can stay at home. Everybody doesn't have Wi-Fi. Everybody doesn't have cell phone service.
Yeah.
So we have to make sure that as the government, as I said, I believe our job as the government is to protect the people. We have to make sure that our students are still fed. And you shout out Crystal. I'm going to shout out Stafford Food Security with Tim. Stafford Food Security has been feeding people during this entire time. As soon as we shut down, he said, hey, principals, what families you know need food? I'm taking food to them. We were delivering food. We were taking in food. We were making sure that people were fed. You had Marcus with Solific seafood food truck out here in these neighborhoods giving free lunch. You had people like Big Bad W Barbecue who was out in these neighborhoods giving free lunch. And we have G Cube Enterprises, Vernon Green, who was paying these food trucks to make sure they could give free lunches and free dinners to these communities who were neglected and looked over during this whole time frame. And so we have to make sure that the government is doing what we're doing. And that was one of the pieces of legislation that just passed out the House. The Republicans voted for that, so we're good for that. Okay. That passed out the House, and hopefully the governor will be signing that soon to make sure that students, even though they're not in school, can still get the food they need.
Okay.
Shout out to everybody that's been helping the kids.
You know, being that this is no cap radio, we like to do basically a cap or no cap. It's really a true or false. Cap being false, no cap being true.
He know that, man. He all right.
I know. Just gotta clarify that. So we basically want to you ask something of yourself, or tell us something of yourself, and we basically answer if it's cap or no cap. Something that you wouldn't think we would know. You know, I'm sure that's a lot. I'm sure he got tons of stuff.
I love talking to people about this. I'm a college dropout.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Cap.
I'm going to say cap. I got to say cap on that one. Yeah. He capping, y'all.
I dropped out my junior year of college.
Okay.
Yep.
But you went back and finished, though.
Nope. I'm back now. But I dropped out in 2014, and here I am just starting back again.
Wow.
And you did all that without a
fooled me.
Joshua Cole, we're going to have to get you back in here, man. We got a lot to talk about. That's, wow, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I
impressive.
use that to tell people all the time when I go into the schools and I start talking to them, I'd say, hey, I'm a college dropout. If you could see all that I've done now, and it's just a little bit. Imagine what you could do, either one with a degree, or if you decided to go after graduating high school, going straight into entrepreneuring and starting your own business from scratch. So people can do anything. We just need support. We need community support, and we need to hold each other accountable and help each other, and we can do it all.
Man,
Yeah,
it's powerful, man. I appreciate
It
you
is.
sharing
It
that.
is. Well, yeah, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
I appreciate
We
it.
would love to have you back anytime.
I'll come back.
Man, I'm honored to have you.
Yes, yes. This is No Cap Radio.
Yeah.
Yo, Black Seeds, we got a hit right here, my nerd.
The melody mesh with the vocals heavenly, using expressors to get my message across collectively. And if my destiny's still yet to be, I let it be. Fresh out the espresso, the cellulose, the telephony. Measure my success by my own trajectory, not the people next to me. Made a competition, rest in peace. I never needed their help, they needed help from me. You can be good by yourself, but together we could arguably be the GOAT, greatest of all times, real life. Whoever said sky's the limit lied. All the time, wasted spirit, broken and defeated, depleted of happiness in the past, and glad it is. Millions on millions of cash, imagine this. Ain't too much change in the black community as it is. We gon' need more than a faster whip, newer crib, nicer watch, a badder chick.
If you got a divine to conquer, there must be strength in numbers. You do the math. We gon' have to come together, y'all. Economically, that's real. Financially, it's hard when the ambition. Stop hating, getting pulled back.
Ambition have been a gift and a curse, to say the least. Came so far, name heavy up in the streets. Friends in high places now. To be honest, I feel more behind now than I did when I started. I know I can't compete with nobody but me. I hope me and who I was yesterday never meet. If I'm acting brand new, then congratulate me. I'm a work in progress, cause the mission never complete. Sometimes the world mine, I can conquer it all. Other times it's all lies, cause I'm just too small. Learning hard lessons of life, I hate that part. Left a few marks, but it made me way more smart. It's a shame way the industry will prey on your hunger, thinking they getting over. Whole time the game going under. It remind me of a bald eagle with clipped wings. You majestic, but suggest you need a budget to sing. Man, please.